There is a kind of woman you don't see much anymore. She didn't talk about money. She didn't post about it. She didn't follow anyone online for financial tips because there was no one to follow. She just managed, quietly, stubbornly, with a steadiness that made the people around her feel safe even when everything else felt uncertain. I got obsessed with understanding how she did it. Not the surface stuff, not the coupons, not the casseroles, the deeper thing, the mindset underneath it all. And what I found was not what I expected. These weren't tricks, they were truths. Truths about human nature, about desire, about discipline. Truths so fundamental that they still work today in 2026 with inflation chewing through our paychecks and algorithms designed by billion-dollar companies specifically to make us spend money we don't have. 21 rules, every single one of them a forgotten piece of psychological wisdom. Let's begin. Here's something that will make every retailer nervous if you actually do it. When a woman in 1983 saw something she wanted, in a department store window, in a catalog, in a neighbor's home, she didn't buy it. Not because she couldn't, but because she had made herself a promise. Nothing non-essential leaves with me today. She'd write the item down, close the catalog, fold the corner of the page, and wait. 48 hours. Not one, not 12, 48. And here's what she knew that the behavioral economists wouldn't put into language for another 20 years. That the feeling of wanting something and the actual need for it are two completely different neurological events. The first one is loud and urgent and completely unreliable. The second one is quieter, and it's the one that tells the truth. When you want something badly in the moment, your brain is flooded with dopamine. That dopamine is not responding to the item. It's responding to the possibility of the item, the anticipation, the imagined version of your life once you have it. 48 hours drains that flood. The dopamine settles. The imagined life fades back into ordinary reality, and then you can see clearly, do I actually want this, or did I just want the feeling of wanting it? In a world where your phone is a 24-hour shopping mall, where one-tap checkout, countdown timers, and only 3 left notifications are designed by people with PhDs in human psychology specifically to destroy your ability to pause, this rule is not old-fashioned, it is radical. Try it for 1 month. Write the item down, wait 48 hours. You will be genuinely stunned by how many things you wanted that you simply stopped wanting, without discipline, without deprivation, just because you gave your brain time to be honest with you. That's not frugality, that's clarity. Rule 2. The visible cost. Something changed the moment people stopped paying in cash. And I don't mean practically, I mean psychologically. When a woman in 1982 bought a winter coat, she opened her purse and counted out the bills. She felt each one leave her hand, 20, 40, 60, 80. She looked at the pile on the counter and she felt something, a small, real, physical sensation that neuroscientists now call the pain of paying. That pain was not a flaw, it was information. It was her nervous system telling her, this matters, pay attention, is this right? When we swipe a card, that sensation is almost entirely absent. When we tap a phone, it's gone completely. When we click Place Order on a website, we feel almost nothing at all. And the spending that results is dramatically, measurably higher. Studies show people spend up to 83% more when paying digitally than when paying with physical cash, not because they intend to, but because the pain of paying has been engineered away. Those women weren't more disciplined than we are. They were operating in a world that still made money feel real. So here's what you do. Once a week, not in an app, not in a spreadsheet, you pick up a pen and you write down what you spent. Every category, the actual number. You let it sit there on paper, in your own handwriting, in a way that an app notification never will. You're not analyzing it, you're not building a budget, you're just feeling the number. You're restoring the friction that the digital economy has stolen from you. It's uncomfortable the first few times. Good. That discomfort is what used to be normal. It's the feeling of understanding the cost of your choices. Bring it back. Rule 3. One in, one out. This rule sounds like it's about clutter. It isn't. It's about a deeply uncomfortable truth that every single thing you own that you don't use represents money that is frozen, dead, locked inside an object that's sitting in a closet or a drawer or a box in the garage, doing absolutely nothing. The women who managed household budgets in the 1980s had smaller homes, fewer rooms, and less storage than we do today. They couldn't accumulate invisibly. There was nowhere to hide the excess. And so they developed a discipline not out of philosophy, but out of necessity. One thing comes in, one thing goes out. Not eventually, not during the next seasonal cleanout. Now, before the new thing arrives, or the moment it does. This sounds like a space rule, but run the actual psychology and you'll see what it really is. When you know that buying something new means releasing something old, you pause. You think about what you'd give up. You ask whether the new thing is genuinely worth displacing the old one. And in that pause, something important happens. You realize how many times the answer is no. How many times the new thing isn't actually better. It's just newer. It's just shinier. It's just currently being desired because you saw it somewhere and your brain lit up. The one in, one out rule forces you to make that comparison explicitly, consciously, before the purchase, not after, when the receipt is already gone and the dopamine has already faded. In 2026, the average American home contains over 300,000 items. The storage unit industry generates $40 billion a year from people paying money to store things they already paid money for. This is not an organizational problem. It's a psychological one. And one in, one out is the quiet correction. But here's where it starts getting strange, because the next rule isn't about what you buy. It's about whose life you're secretly trying to fund without ever realizing it. Rule 4. The status anchor. I want you to think about someone in your life right now. Maybe a neighbor, a friend, someone you follow online, someone whose home or wardrobe or car or vacations you're aware of in a way that's almost ambient, always there, just below the surface. Got 'em? Good. Now ask yourself honestly, how much of what you've bought in the last 6 months was shaped, even partly, by that awareness? The women who survived and even quietly thrived during the economically brutal years of the early 1980s had a name for this person. They called them the Joneses. And the ones who kept their financial footing had made a specific, deliberate decision. I am not living for the Joneses. Not out of bitterness, not even out of judgment, just a clear-eyed refusal. Because here's what they understood that we tend to forget. Social comparison spending is almost entirely invisible to the person doing it. You don't feel yourself being influenced. It doesn't announce itself. You just find yourself wanting things you didn't want 6 months ago, in a neighborhood you didn't care about 6 months ago, in a lifestyle that mysteriously expanded to match the people around you. Behavioral economists call this lifestyle contagion. It spreads like a slow, invisible infection, and it is relentlessly, silently expensive. The prescription is not to isolate yourself, not to feel superior to anyone, not to stop admiring beautiful things. It's simpler and stranger than that. Name your anchor. Write down the person or group whose lifestyle most silently shapes your own spending. Put the name on paper, and then once a month, when you review what you spent, ask, how much of this was for me, and how much was for them? That question, asked honestly and regularly, will quietly dismantle one of the most expensive, invisible forces in your financial life. Most people never even know this force exists, they just call it wanting things. But wanting doesn't appear from nowhere, it comes from somewhere. And when you find the source, you get your choices back. Rule 5. Full price is a signal. She never paid full price, not because she couldn't, because she understood something about retail pricing that most people still don't. Full price is not the real price. It is the ceiling of the price. It's the number a store puts on a tag knowing that a significant portion of customers will pay it while they wait for the rest of the inventory to move, and then lower the price for everyone who waited. Department stores in the 1980s ran like clockwork. Seasonal merchandise arrived at full price, and women who paid attention knew, with almost mathematical certainty, when the markdowns would come. 8 weeks after arrival for clothing, end of quarter for home goods, January for linens and bedding. They had memorized the rhythm the way farmers memorize seasons. This wasn't bargain hunting as sport, it was the rejection of artificial urgency. Because that is what full price exists to create, urgency. The sense that if you don't buy now, you'll miss out, that the item will be gone, that waiting means losing. Every limited time only label, every while supplies last, every countdown timer on a website is delivering the same neurological message that full price tags have always delivered. Act now, think later. Women who understood this pricing rhythm simply flipped it. Think now, act later. They decided in advance what they wanted. Sometimes they'd even try the code on, and then they waited. Not passively, deliberately. They knew the markdown was coming because the markdown always came. The seasons of retail haven't changed as much as we think. Black Friday, end of winter clearance, Labor Day home sales, back-to-school deals, the calendar still exists. What has changed is the layer of manufactured urgency placed on top of it, specifically engineered to make you forget that the calendar exists. See through it. Know the cycle. Let the urgency wash over you like weather you were prepared for. Full price is not the answer. It is the opening position of a negotiation that most shoppers don't even know they're in. Rule 6. The Future Self Letter. This is going to sound like it belongs in a self-help book. Stay with me, because the financial psychology behind it is real, documented, and quietly astonishing. There's a problem with how humans experience time. The person we will be in 5 or 10 years doesn't feel like us. Neurologically, when people think about their future selves, the brain activates in patterns more similar to thinking about a stranger than to thinking about their present self. This is not a metaphor, it's an fMRI result. And it has a devastating implication. When you choose to spend today instead of save, you are, in a very real neurological sense, spending money that belongs to a stranger, someone you don't know well, someone whose life and needs and feelings don't fully register as your own. Women in the 1980s didn't know about fMRI machines, but the ones who built real financial stability did something that addressed this problem directly. They wrote letters. Not always formal, sometimes just a few lines in a journal, describing the life they wanted in 5 years, the safety they wanted to feel, the freedom they were building toward. And then they came back to those words. They reread them before big decisions. They used the letter to make the future self specific, named, real, someone whose well-being they were actively responsible for. Because once the future self becomes real, spending on their behalf becomes real too. The $800 impulse purchase stops being an abstraction and starts being $800 stolen from someone specific, someone who will feel the absence of that money in a real, lived way. Write the letter, not to be poetic, to make yourself real to yourself across time. It is one of the cheapest, strangest, most powerful financial tools I have ever encountered. And it costs nothing but 20 minutes and the willingness to be honest about what you actually want your life to look like. Now, the next rule has nothing to do with numbers, and it might be the one that saves you the most money. Rule 7. The dignified no. Here's a truth that nobody talks about in financial content. A stunning percentage of the money American families spend is spent for other people. Not on other people, for other people. To meet their expectations, to avoid their judgment, to maintain an image in their eyes. The school fundraiser you contributed to but couldn't really afford. The office gift pool you joined because declining felt awkward. The family event you overspent on because you didn't want anyone to think things were tight. The friend's destination bachelorette trip you went into debt for. None of these purchases were for you. They were performances. And performances are exhausting, expensive, and ultimately unsatisfying. Women managing household budgets in the 1980s often couldn't perform. The money simply wasn't there. And so they developed something elegant by necessity, a way of declining that maintained their dignity, honored the relationship, and cost them nothing in either money or social standing. 2 sentences, that's all it took. That doesn't work for us right now. Period. No elaboration, no apologizing, no fictional excuse about a prior commitment, just those 7 words delivered warmly and with finality. Here's the psychology that made it work. Most social pressure is uncomfortable silence filling on your end, not actual judgment from theirs. When you over-explain a financial decline, when you invent reasons, apologize profusely, go into detail, you are signaling that a long enough explanation might change your answer, so people push. They offer alternatives. They negotiate. That doesn't work for us right now. Signals nothing. It's a closed door. It's warm and it's final, and it gives the other person nothing to argue against. Practice it. Say it out loud right now if you need to, because the ability to use it will save you, not just money, but the quiet resentment that builds when you spend on obligation instead of choice. Your financial life belongs to you. The dignified no is how you keep it that way. Rule 8. Cost per use. Before she bought anything, she divided. It was a habit so automatic she may not have even consciously named it. She just did the math. Not the sticker price math, the real math. The number that told her what this thing would actually cost her to own, not just to buy. A coat that costs $200 sounds expensive, but if you wear it every winter day for 5 years, that's roughly 550 wears. The coat costs you 36 cents every single time you put it on. That's not expensive. That's almost free. A $40 top that you buy because it's on sale and you wear twice, once to the event it was purchased for and never again because it doesn't match anything else you own, costs you $20 per wear. That bargain is more expensive per use than the coat that costs 5 times as much. This is the calculation these women ran, not in spreadsheets, in their heads, at the counter, before opening their wallets. Cost per use is the single most clarifying financial lens I have ever encountered, because it strips away the 2 most powerful distortions in retail psychology: the illusion that a high price means bad value, and the illusion that a low price means good value. Neither is true. Price is just a number on a tag. Value is what you actually get in exchange for that number over time. Run this calculation on your gym membership. Divide the annual cost by the number of times you actually went last year. Run it on the streaming service you opened twice. Run it on the supplement sitting in your cabinet. Run it on the kitchen appliance taking up counter space. The numbers will tell you everything you need to know about where your money is actually going and what it's actually buying you. Not price, value. There's a difference. These women knew it. Most of us have forgotten it. Rule 9. The closed category. This rule is about a concept that sounds simple and is almost never actually practiced. When the money for a category is gone, It's gone. Not mostly gone, not basically gone, not I'll just take a little from the grocery allocation. Gone. Closed. That chapter of the month is finished. Women who managed household budgets in the 1980s with real discipline had a mental architecture around their spending that modern budgeters almost never develop. They didn't think in terms of a single pool of money they were slowly draining. They thought in terms of categories, each with its own hard boundary, each functioning almost like a separate account, even when it was all one bank account, even when it was all physical cash in the same drawer. The clothing money and the household money and the children's school money lived in different psychological compartments, and when one compartment was empty, the spending in that category stopped. Not reluctantly, not after negotiating with yourself. It just stopped, the way you stop pouring water from an empty pitcher. Here's why modern budgeters almost never achieve this, because budget has come to mean a description of spending, not a constraint on it. We track what we spent last month. We notice we went over. We feel mildly bad about it, and then next month we do it again. The closed category is different. It's a constraint that exists before the spending happens. It changes the decision in real time, not the regret afterward. Try making one category actually closed this month. Not suggested, not guideline, closed. When the allocation runs out, it runs out. Feel what it's like to let a category be finished. That experience, even once, will teach you more about financial discipline than a year of tracking apps and budget spreadsheets. This is where most people today fail, not from lack of knowledge, but from what comes next. Pay attention to this one. Rule 10. Anticipate, don't react. She was never surprised by the car registration. She was never blindsided by the school photos, or the dentist bill, or the holiday spending, or the annual insurance increase. Not because these things didn't happen. They happened every year, like clockwork, because that's exactly what they were. They were clocks. Predictable, reliable, annual certainties masquerading as surprises. And she had decided, quietly and permanently, to stop pretending they were surprises. Here's the psychology that makes unexpected expenses so financially damaging. It's not the expense itself, it's the fact that we experience it as an emergency. And emergencies activate a kind of panicked decision-making that is almost always expensive. We reach for credit, we pull from savings we weren't planning to touch, we make rushed choices, we pay convenience premiums we wouldn't otherwise pay. All of that emergency premium is completely avoidable if you just decide in advance that these things are not emergencies. They're appointments. The car registration is an appointment you have every year in the same month. The back-to-school spending is an appointment that arrives every August. The holiday season, that enormous, expensive, emotionally loaded season, is an appointment that arrives on the exact same day it always does. Here's the practice. Sit down and make a list of every expense you had in the last 2 years that felt like a surprise. Every one of them. Write them all down. Then divide each one by 12 and set that amount aside monthly. Not in a crisis, not reactively, proactively, calmly, because you are a person who does not get surprised by calendars. What you'll find is that your financial life becomes dramatically quieter, not because your expenses decreased, but because you stopped experiencing them as a tax. An expense you're ready for is not an emergency. It's just Tuesday. Rule 11. The repair reflex. The moment something breaks, your brain does something very specific. It reaches, almost automatically, for the idea of replacement. New, fresh, unblemished, the clean slate appeal of just starting over with something that works. And retailers know this. They have always known this. The disposability of modern products, the planned obsolescence, the glued seams, the batteries you can't replace, the parts that aren't sold separately, is not an accident. It's a business model. built on the exact moment your brain reaches for replacement. Women in the 1980s had a different first reflex, not because they were better people, because replacement was genuinely costly, returns were limited, and the idea of throwing away something that could be fixed was almost morally uncomfortable, a value inherited from parents and grandparents who had lived through genuine scarcity. Their first reflex, every single time, was a question. Can this be fixed? Not, should I fix this? Not, is it worth it? Just, can this be fixed? The factual question first, because you cannot make an intelligent comparison between repair and replacement until you know what repair actually costs. Most of the time, people skip that question entirely. They go straight from, this is broken, to, I need a new one, without ever pausing to discover that the repair might cost $20 and take an afternoon. Sometimes replacement genuinely is better. Sometimes the repair would cost more than the item is worth, or the fixed version would be unreliable, or the technology is genuinely obsolete. Those are legitimate reasons to replace. But it's broken and replacement feels easier is not a reason, it's a reflex, and an expensive one. Build the question into yourself. Make it automatic. Can this be fixed, and at what cost? Answer that first, then decide.